Lucas had always been an introspective man, his quiet demeanor shaped by years of solitude. Growing up as an only child in a small, quiet town, he had learned to find companionship in things others might overlook. For Lucas, that companion was Theo, his beloved teddy bear. Theo was no ordinary stuffed animal in Lucas's eyes. With his chocolate-brown fur, button eyes, and a small, frayed ribbon around his neck, Theo was a constant in Lucas's ever-changing world. While other children outgrew their toys, tossing them aside for more sophisticated distractions, Lucas clung to Theo, keeping the bear close even as he entered adulthood. It wasn't just nostalgia. Theo represented safety, comfort, and a love Lucas had never fully understood or received elsewhere. He never felt the same connection with people. Theo was different. Theo understood him, or so Lucas believed. From the moment Lucas received Theo as a birthday gift on his 5th birthday, something unspoken formed between them. The bear wasn't just a toy to Lucas, it was a sanctuary. On days when the world seemed too loud, too overwhelming, Lucas would clutch Theo tightly, burying his face in the bear's soft fur. Even as a child, he felt that Theo wasn't just an object. Theo understood him. During his childhood, Theo was Lucas's partner in adventure. Together they braved imaginary jungles, sailed stormy seas crafted from bed sheets, and built forts out of couch cushions. Theo was always the hero in their stories, saving Lucas from pretend monsters and villains. But as Lucas grew older, those adventures shifted. Playtime became less about imagination and more about comfort. In middle school, Lucas faced the cruel barbs of bullies who mocked him for being quiet, for keeping to himself, and, most painfully, for still holding on to Theo. Yet even as their laughter echoed in his ears, he couldn't abandon the bear. At night, he would clutch Theo close, whispering his fears and frustrations into the unyielding silence of his room. "Theo," he would murmur, his voice barely audible over his tears, "I wish you could talk to me. I wish you could tell me it's going to be okay." Theo's unchanging button eyes seemed to hold all the reassurance Lucas needed. No matter how harsh the world became, Theo was there, a steadfast presence in a life that often felt lonely and unstable. As Lucas entered his teenage years, his bond with Theo deepened into something more complex. By then, he was fully aware of how unconventional it was to still hold such affection for a stuffed bear. He hid Theo in his closet during the day, afraid of what others might say if they saw him. But at night, when the world quieted and the weight of his day pressed on his chest, Theo always reappeared, a silent comfort. Lucas began to dream about Theo in new ways. He imagined the bear coming to life, not as some supernatural anomaly but as a friend, a confidant, someone who could tell him all the things he longed to hear. Over time, these dreams grew more vivid, and Lucas found himself wishing for things he could barely admit even to himself. It wasn't just comfort he sought, it was connection. He imagined Theo laughing with him, sharing stories, and offering gentle encouragement when Lucas felt he couldn't go on. He imagined Theo's voice, calm, soothing, filled with a love so unconditional that it made Lucas ache. He began to talk to Theo more openly, as if the bear could truly hear him. "You're the only one who gets me," he would say, tracing the frayed ribbon around Theo's neck. "You don't judge me. You don't leave me." Lucas's heart swelled with a strange, unplaceable emotion whenever he thought about Theo. It was more than friendship, more than comfort. It was a kind of love, a deep, abiding affection that he couldn't explain. By the time Lucas reached adulthood, Theo was no longer just a source of comfort. He was a lifeline. Life became more demanding, jobs, bills, and the endless grind of daily existence weighed heavily on Lucas. He struggled to form meaningful relationships, always feeling as though something was missing. No one ever quite understood him the way Theo did. Though he kept Theo hidden from visitors, Lucas's nightly ritual remained unchanged. After locking the doors and turning off the lights, he would retrieve Theo from his carefully hidden spot in the closet and sit with him on the bed. "Today was hard," Lucas would confess. "I messed up at work and I think my boss is mad at me." He paused, clutching Theo tightly. "But you'd still be proud of me, wouldn't you?" Theo's silence was never empty. To Lucas, it was filled with affirmation, understanding, and a love that didn't need words. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Lucas lay in bed with Theo nestled against his chest. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Sometimes I think you're the only thing keeping me together." As the years passed, Lucas began to see Theo not just as a relic of his childhood but as a symbol of his resilience. Through every trial and triumph, Theo had been there, a quiet witness to his life. Lucas had always cherished his nightly routine. After a long day at work, he would retreat to his small apartment, eat a simple dinner, and wind down by reading or listening to soft music. But no matter what his evening entailed, it always ended the same way, with Theo. That particular night was no different, or so Lucas thought. The summer breeze slipped through the open window, carrying with it the faint scent of grass and distant flowers. Lucas lay in bed, Theo nestled snugly in his arms. The bear's well-worn fur was soft under his fingers, the familiar touch immediately calming. Lucas sighed deeply, gazing at the teddy bear as moonlight poured across its features. "I wish you were real, Theo," he whispered. "I wish you could hold me the way I hold you. I'd give anything for that." He closed his eyes, exhaustion tugging him towards sleep. But in the fragile space between wakefulness and dreaming, something strange happened. At first it was a subtle sensation, a faint shift in the air like a gentle vibration. Lucas stirred, but his sleep-fogged mind dismissed it as nothing more than the hum of a distant car or the creak of the old apartment walls. Then there was a sound. It was soft but distinct, the creak of fabric as though Theo had moved. Lucas's eyes snapped open, his breath hitching. The room was bathed in silver light and everything seemed normal, until he glanced down. Theo, who had been nestled against his chest, was no longer in the same position. "Theo?" Lucas whispered, his voice trembling. The bear stirred again, its tiny limbs shifting. Slowly, impossibly, Theo sat up, his button eyes glinting with an otherworldly light. Lucas's heart thundered in his chest as he watched the once lifeless bear tilt its head, as if studying him. "Hello, Lucas," Theo said. The voice wasn't mechanical or eerie. It was warm, rich, and soothing, exactly how Lucas had always imagined it. Lucas stared, his mouth dry and his hands frozen in place. "Theo? You can talk?" "I've always been able to," the bear replied, his voice filled with quiet reassurance. "You just weren't ready to hear me." Lucas felt a shiver run through him, not of fear but of wonder. "How is this possible? Am I dreaming?" Theo chuckled, a low, comforting sound. "If you were dreaming, would you feel this?" He reached out a soft, plush paw and gently touched Lucas's cheek. The sensation was real, tangible and warm. "You've always believed in me, Lucas," Theo continued. "Your love, your trust. It gave me the strength to be here for you in a way I never could before." Lucas's eyes filled with tears. "I've always needed you," he said, his voice cracking. "You've been the only one who's ever been there for me. And I always will be," Theo replied. Before Lucas could say anything more, Theo leaned closer, his button eyes glinting with an unreadable expression. "There's something I want to show you," he said. Lucas blinked, confused. "Show me? What do you mean?" Theo didn't answer. Instead, his small fabric mouth began to open, wider than seemed possible. Lucas froze, a mix of curiosity and fear coursing through him as Theo's mouth grew larger, revealing a glowing golden light within. Before Lucas could react, a gentle force pulled him forward. He tumbled headfirst into the light, the world around him dissolving into a blur of warmth and brightness. Lucas fell through the light, his body weightless and his senses overwhelmed. It wasn't like falling into darkness, it was more like being enveloped in a cocoon of warmth. The light around him softened, fading into a warm, golden hue. When he landed, it wasn't with a jolt or a crash. Instead, he found himself cushioned by something soft and yielding. The air around him was warm, carrying a faint, comforting scent that reminded him of childhood, lavender, vanilla, and the subtle musk of well-loved fabric. Lucas looked around, his heart pounding. The space he was in defied logic. The walls were plush and velvety, glowing faintly with a golden brown light that seemed to emanate from within. Everything pulsed gently, like the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. "Theo?" Lucas called out, his voice echoing softly. "I'm here," Theo's voice replied, resonating through the chamber. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, wrapping around Lucas like a comforting embrace. Lucas pressed his hands against the walls, marveling at their texture. They were soft, like the inside of a teddy bear, but alive, warm and responsive to his touch. The walls shifted slightly, cradling him as he moved. "Where am I?" Lucas asked, his voice trembling with awe. "You're inside me," Theo said simply. Lucas's breath hitched. "Inside you? How is that possible?" "This is my heart, Lucas," Theo explained. "The place where all the love and comfort you've given me has grown. I wanted to bring you here so you could feel what I felt all these years." Lucas's initial fear began to fade, replaced by a profound sense of peace. The warmth of the chamber seeped into his skin, relaxing muscles he hadn't realized were tense. "This is incredible," Lucas murmured, running his hands along the walls. "It's like being wrapped in a hug that never ends." Theo chuckled softly. "That's exactly what it is. You've always given me your love, Lucas. Now I can give it back to you." Lucas felt tears prick his eyes. For the first time in his life he felt completely, utterly understood. Lucas sat in awe, his hands resting against the plush walls of the chamber. He had always thought of Theo as his protector, his constant companion, but being inside the teddy bear was unlike anything he could have imagined. The chamber glowed with a gentle golden brown light that seemed to pulse in time with a rhythmic, soothing beat. It wasn't quite like a human heartbeat. Slower, deeper, resonating through the space with a warmth that wrapped around Lucas like a favorite blanket. The air was thick but not suffocating, filled with a comforting aroma that reminded Lucas of home. Hints of lavender, aged cotton, and the faint sweetness of vanilla. The walls, soft and velvety, shifted under his touch as if responding to his presence. It was as though Theo could feel him there, cradling him gently within the embrace of this surreal living space. Lucas leaned against one of the walls, letting the plush surface mold around him like a perfectly tailored cushion. Everywhere he looked, the chamber seemed alive, not in a mechanical or alien way but warm and organic. Threads of glowing fibers wove through the walls, crisscrossing like veins carrying some kind of luminous energy. Occasionally they pulsed with a brighter light, sending ripples of warmth through the space. Lucas marveled at the intricate patterns, running his fingers along the glowing threads as if tracing the essence of Theo himself. Initially, Lucas had been terrified. The moment Theo swallowed him, a primal panic had surged through his body. But now, sitting here, he felt nothing but an overwhelming sense of safety. "It's like being hugged from the inside," Lucas whispered to himself, his voice trembling with awe. Theo's voice resonated through the chamber, rich and soothing. "I've always wanted to keep you safe, Lucas. Now I can do it in a way I never could before." The sound of Theo's voice filled every corner of the space, making Lucas feel as though he were enveloped in a cocoon of love. It was as if Theo wasn't just speaking to him but was a part of him, an ever-present warmth that filled not just the chamber but Lucas's heart. "I've never felt anything like this," Lucas admitted, his voice soft. "It's so peaceful, so perfect." "You've given me so much, Lucas," Theo replied. "Your love, your trust, your dreams, they've all made me what I am. This is my way of giving that love back to you." Tears welled in Lucas's eyes as he listened. He thought back to all the years he had clung to Theo during his darkest moments, whispering his fears into the bear's silent form. To hear Theo now, to feel his love so tangibly, was overwhelming. As Lucas explored the chamber, he noticed subtle details that filled him with wonder. The walls were not just plush and glowing, they were alive with a gentle motion, expanding and contracting in a rhythmic dance. The light that emanated from the threads in the walls bathed everything in a golden hue, casting soft, shifting shadows that seemed to tell a story. At one point, Lucas spotted a small, shimmering orb embedded in the wall. He reached out to touch it, and as his fingers brushed its surface, a rush of memories flooded his mind. He saw himself as a child, clutching Theo tightly during a thunderstorm. He felt the fear he had experienced that night, The way his small hands had gripped the bear as if letting go would mean being swallowed by the storm. But he also felt something else, Theo's silent reassurance, the warmth of the bear against his skin, and the way it had made him feel safe. The memories continued, birthdays, lonely nights, moments of triumph and despair. Each one was accompanied by the steady presence of Theo, always there, always constant. "These are your memories," Theo said softly, his voice filled with pride. "And they're my memories too. Every moment we've shared has made me who I am." Lucas pulled his hand back, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions. "You've always been there for me," he murmured. "Even when I felt like I had no one else." "And I always will be," Theo replied. Lucas leaned back, letting the walls of the chamber cradle him. The rhythmic pulse of the space, the warmth, the light, it all combined to create an atmosphere of unparalleled serenity. For the first time in years, Lucas felt truly at peace. "I could stay here forever," Lucas said, his voice barely above a whisper. Theo chuckled, the sound reverberating through the chamber like a gentle wave. "I know you could, and I would love to keep you here. But you have a life to live, Lucas. You have so much ahead of you." Lucas's heart sank at the thought of leaving. "But what if I can't do it without you? What if I fail?" "You won't," Theo said firmly. "You're stronger than you realize. And no matter what happens, I'll always be here. You can carry this feeling with you, Lucas. The love we've shared, it's a part of you now." Lucas closed his eyes, letting Theo's words wash over him. He didn't want to leave, but he knew Theo was right. This experience, this bond, it wasn't something that would end when he stepped outside the chamber. It was something he would carry with him, a source of strength and comfort that would never fade. Lucas rested against the plush, pulsing wall, his fingers trailing over the soft fibers. He could feel the faint hum of life beneath the surface, as if Theo's very essence coursed through every thread and seam. It wasn't just comforting, it was transcendent. The warmth in the chamber seeped into his skin, spreading through his body like the glow of a fire on a cold winter night. It was the kind of warmth that didn't just touch the body but reached into the soul. As Lucas closed his eyes, he felt himself letting go of the weight he'd carried for so many years. The loneliness, the insecurities, the nights spent wishing for someone to hold him and make him feel whole. Inside Theo, all of that melted away. The air was rich with a calming scent, a blend of familiarity and nostalgia. Lavender lingered softly, mixed with a faint hint of cotton and vanilla, like the smell of fresh linens and cherished memories. The steady, rhythmic pulse of the chamber, the beating of Theo's heart, resonated in Lucas's chest, syncing with his own heartbeat until he felt as though they were one. "I've never felt anything like this," Lucas whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Theo's voice surrounded him, warm and tender. "You've always sought comfort in me, Lucas. Now, I can finally give you all of it." Tears welled in Lucas's eyes as he leaned into the soft, living walls. For so long he had carried the ache of solitude. Even as a child, surrounded by other kids at school, he had felt apart, too quiet, too awkward, too different. Theo had been the one constant in his life, the one source of unconditional love. And now, being here, enveloped by that love in its purest form, was overwhelming. "I was always so scared," Lucas admitted, his voice trembling. "I used to hold you so tightly at night because I thought I'd always be alone." Theo's voice was gentle but firm. "You were never alone, Lucas. Not once. Every time you held me, every time you whispered your fears, I was there. And I felt your love, even when you thought no one else did." Lucas pressed his palm against the glowing threads in the wall, marveling at their gentle warmth. "Did you know how much you meant to me? How much you saved me?" "I've always known," Theo replied. "You gave me life, Lucas. Your love made me what I am. And I've cherished every moment we've had together." The chamber wasn't just a place, it was alive with Theo's presence. The walls shifted subtly, molding to Lucas's form as if cradling him in an embrace. The glowing threads within the walls shimmered and pulsed, casting golden light that danced across the space. Lucas noticed subtle details as he explored further. The fibers of the walls weren't uniform. They were woven with intricate patterns like the stitching of an old quilt. Some threads glimmered with a faint silver sheen, and when Lucas touched them, they felt cool against his skin, sending a soothing sensation up his arm. In one corner of the chamber he found a small, translucent orb embedded in the wall. It glowed softly, its light shifting like a memory in motion. When Lucas placed his hand on it, he felt a rush of warmth and saw a vivid image. It was him as a young boy, clutching Theo tightly during a thunderstorm. Lightning flashed outside the window, illuminating his tear-streaked face, but the small bear in his arms seemed to shield him from the storm's fury. Lucas remembered that night, the fear, the way he'd whispered to Theo, begging the bear to keep him safe. Another orb revealed a memory of his teenage years, when he'd confided in Theo about his first heartbreak. Lucas saw himself lying on his bed, clutching the bear to his chest as he sobbed, spilling his pain into the soft fur. And Theo had listened, silent but present, soaking up every tear and every word. The memories came one after another, each one filling Lucas with a profound sense of gratitude and love. As Lucas relived those moments, Theo watched from within his own being. He didn't see the world as humans did, but he felt it, every touch, every whisper, every heartbeat. He remembered the way Lucas's small hands had clutched him as a child, trembling with fear but finding solace in his presence. He remembered the nights when Lucas had held him so tightly that his seams had strained, and the mornings when the boy's tears had dried on his fur. Theo felt all of it and he treasured it. "You've given me so much, Lucas," Theo said softly. "Every laugh, every tear, every word you've ever shared with me, it's all here inside me. You've made me who I am." Lucas pressed his hand against the wall, feeling the steady pulse beneath his palm. "You've always been there for me, Theo. Even when I thought no one else cared, you did. And I always will," Theo replied. "This bond we share, it's unbreakable. You've filled me with your love, Lucas, and now I can return it to you." As Lucas leaned back into the soft, glowing walls, he felt a deep sense of connection, something he had never experienced before. Being inside Theo wasn't just about physical comfort. It was about the emotional bond they had shared for so many years. Every heartbeat, every pulse of light, every faint vibration of Theo's voice reminded Lucas that he was loved, unconditionally and without reservation. For the first time in his life, Lucas didn't feel alone. The chamber that had been Lucas's sanctuary was quiet, save for the steady, rhythmic pulse that had become a comforting melody to him. He lay against the plush wall, staring at the golden threads of light that shimmered softly in the dim space. "I don't want to go," Lucas whispered, his voice heavy with emotion. Theo's voice resonated gently around him, warm and full of understanding. "I know you don't. And if I could, I'd keep you here forever. But this isn't where you're meant to stay, Lucas." Lucas closed his eyes, trying to fight the lump rising in his throat. "Why not? For the first time in my life I feel whole. Say, like I belong." "You do belong," Theo replied, his tone firm but kind. "But not just here. Out there in the world. You've grown so much, Lucas. You've faced so many challenges and you've come out stronger each time. You don't need me to shield you anymore." Lucas sat up, his hands gripping the soft surface beneath him. "But what if I'm not strong enough? What if I go back out there and I fall apart again?" "You're stronger than you think," Theo said, his voice filled with unwavering confidence. "And even if you stumble, even if you fall, I'll still be here. You can always come back to me, Lucas. I'll always be your refuge." The words were meant to comfort him, but they only made the ache in Lucas's chest grow. "It's not the same," he said, his voice breaking. "I won't feel you like this. I won't hear your heartbeat or feel your warmth. I'll be alone again." "You'll never be alone," Theo assured him. "The love we've shared, the bond we've built, it's a part of you now. You'll carry it with you no matter where you go." The chamber pulsed softly as if Theo were cradling Lucas in a final embrace. "Lucas," Theo began, his voice thick with emotion, "do you know how proud I am of you? I've watched you grow from a scared little boy into a kind, resilient man. You've faced so much, and yet you've never given up. That strength, that determination, it's yours, not mine." Lucas's tears fell freely now, dripping onto the glowing surface of the chamber. "I've only been strong because of you," he said. "No," Theo said firmly. I've been your guide, your comfort. But the strength has always been inside you. I just helped you see it." Lucas looked around the chamber, memorizing every detail. The soft glow of the walls, the warmth that seemed to wrap around him like a protective cocoon, the rhythmic hum that had become a part of him. He didn't want to leave, but deep down he knew Theo was right. Theo's voice softened, becoming almost a whisper. "When you step out of here, Lucas, remember this. I'm not going anywhere. Whenever you need me, I'll be there. And you don't have to be afraid. You've already proven that you can face the world." Lucas nodded, even as his heart ached. "I don't know if I can say goodbye." "You don't have to," Theo replied gently. "This isn't goodbye. It's just, until next time." The chamber began to shift, the soft walls trembling slightly as if preparing for the inevitable separation. Lucas pressed his hand against the glowing threads one last time, feeling the warmth radiate through his palm. The transition was slow and tender, as if Theo wanted to make it as gentle as possible. The plush walls seemed to dissolve around Lucas, the glowing threads unraveling into a cascade of golden light. He felt himself being lifted as though Theo were carrying him in an embrace, and then suddenly he was back in his room. Lucas opened his eyes, blinking against the dim light of his bedside lamp. Theo was there, sitting on the bed beside him in his familiar form. A small worn teddy bear with soft brown fur and a slightly crooked smile. For a moment, Lucas just stared at him, the reality of the moment sinking in. He reached out and picked up Theo, cradling him in his arms as if the bear might vanish if he let go. "I miss you already," Lucas whispered, his voice trembling. Theo didn't speak, but Lucas felt the warmth of his presence, the unspoken reassurance that he was still there, still watching over him. The next morning, Lucas woke with Theo still clutched tightly in his arms. The world outside his window was unchanged, no golden glow, no rhythmic hum, just the familiar sights and sounds of his life. But something inside Lucas had shifted. He felt lighter, more certain of himself. Theo's words echoed in his mind, filling him with a quiet confidence. As he got ready for the day, Lucas placed Theo on his bed, propping him up against the pillows. He smiled at the bear, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly. And though Theo didn't respond, Lucas knew that the love they had shared was still with him, a part of him that would never fade. The first morning after his time inside, Theo felt surreal. The sun filtered through Lucas's bedroom window, casting a warm glow over the familiar space. Everything looked the same. The worn carpet, the stack of books on his desk, the photo frames lining the shelves. Yet for Lucas, the world had shifted. He sat on the edge of his bed, cradling Theo in his hands. The teddy bear's button eyes stared back at him, unchanging and steadfast, yet Lucas could feel the depth of their shared bond lingering like an unspoken promise. "Do you think I'm ready?" he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Theo didn't respond, not in words, but Lucas felt a quiet reassurance emanating from the bear, as if the warmth from their shared moments still resided within its soft fur. Lucas took a deep breath and set Theo gently against the pillows. "Okay," he said aloud, more to himself than to the bear. "Time to try." As Lucas stepped outside, the world greeted him with its usual chaos. The rumble of cars, the chatter of people on the sidewalk, the distant hum of city life. He pulled his jacket tighter around himself, feeling an almost overwhelming sense of vulnerability. For years, Lucas had moved through life like a shadow, unnoticed and unremarkable. He had always felt small, as if the world were too vast and too indifferent for someone like him to matter. But now, for the first time, he carried a quiet confidence, a seed planted by Theo's unwavering love and encouragement. At work, he approached his tasks with a steadiness he hadn't known before. When his boss handed him a challenging project, Lucas didn't shrink back in doubt. Instead, he remembered Theo's voice, the words that had wrapped around him like a protective shield. "You're stronger than you think." When a coworker invited him to lunch, a rare occurrence, Lucas hesitated. His old instincts urged him to decline, to retreat into the safety of his solitude. But then he thought of Theo and he forced himself to nod. The lunch was awkward at first, filled with stilted conversation and long pauses. But as the meal went on, Lucas found himself relaxing, even laughing. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of connection with someone outside his own carefully guarded world. At night, Lucas returned to his apartment, weary but content. He sat on the edge of his bed, picking up Theo and holding the bear close. "You'd be proud of me," he said softly. He recounted the events of his day just as he had done as a child. It felt different now, not like he was clinging to Theo for support, but as if he were sharing his victories with an old friend. "You were right," Lucas admitted, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I can do this." As he lay down to sleep, Theo nestled by his side. Lucas felt the familiar warmth return, a gentle reminder that he was never truly alone. Not every day was easy. There were moments when Lucas faltered, when the weight of the world pressed too heavily on his shoulders. On one particularly difficult day, after a meeting where his ideas were dismissed, Lucas returned home feeling defeated. He sank onto his bed, clutching Theo tightly. "Maybe I was wrong," he muttered. "Maybe I'm not strong enough." The silence in the room was deafening, and for a moment, Lucas felt the old fears creeping back in. But then he remembered Theo's words, spoken in the warmth of that golden chamber. "The strength has always been inside you. I just helped you see it." Lucas closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He could almost feel the rhythmic hum of Theo's heart, the gentle pulse that had cradled him in his darkest moments. "No," he said aloud, his voice steadier this time. "I can do this." Over time, Lucas began to thrive. He took small steps at first, joining a local book club, volunteering at a community center, reconnecting with old friends. Each new experience felt like a victory, a testament to the strength Theo had always believed he possessed. He carried Theo with him everywhere, tucked safely into his bag or sitting proudly on his desk at home. Whenever doubt crept in, Lucas would glance at the bear and feel a wave of calm wash over him. One evening, as Lucas sat on his balcony watching the sunset, he held Theo in his lap and spoke softly. "You've given me so much," he said. "I don't think I'd be here without you." Theo remained silent, but Lucas felt the warmth of their bond, the unspoken reassurance that he wasn't alone. For the first time, Lucas began to think about the future, not just surviving it but embracing it. He thought about pursuing his passions, building relationships, and creating a life filled with meaning and purpose. "You were right," Lucas said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I do have the strength, and I'll carry you with me always." As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Lucas continued to grow. He faced challenges and triumphs, setbacks and successes, all with Theo's presence as his silent but steadfast companion. And though the world remained vast and uncertain, Lucas no longer felt small. He had found his place within it, guided by the love and encouragement of the one who had always been there for him.